Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. It's a lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you.
Goeienaand, good evening fellow South Africans and citizens of the world, and welcome to tonight's live stream. And wow, it's been a hectic hour, I can tell you, putting everything together for tonight. There's a huge amount of information we're going to go through. Alright, let's kick this off, shall we? Now, before I get my guest on, I should tell you that I'm going to play you a piece out of a lengthier audio clip, which I'm going to put up as a separate video later today on lovinglifetv.com. Okay, so that's the only place you will see this audio or hear this audio clip. And I'll tell you what you're going to hear. You're going to hear a discussion in Afrikaans in this little clip by two liquidators identified as Karen and Johan, and they're talking about the assassination of Clutie Murray and his son in South Africa last month. And as I said just now, this is only a short clip, but just understand the context. The discussion is to do with the assassination of Clutie Murray. And my guest tonight, we're going to be talking about that audio tape and what's said in it. As I said, you'll be able to listen to the whole audio tape later today or tomorrow morning on Loving Life TV. Let's listen to this little clip. Here we go.
Almal weer.
Maar weet jy wat?
Question of time. En weet jy wat vir my die ironie van die saak? Presies op die dag, 3 jaar na Donnie Potgieter homself skiet. Presies op die dag, skiet op.
Jy
Nou,
dog.
gaan check die datums, gaan kyk.
Lekker.
Dis freaking weird.
Ja, ek het nog nie so geweet nie op die ding nie.
Dit was nie die aanskeer nie. Dit was nie die besaak nie, dit was nie die goedkas nie. Hulle het toch nie wonder wat hulle gaan doen.
Nee.
Wat ons mense.
Shit.
Wat is baie goed.
Ja, nee, dit is, ja, jy noem nou iets wat ook opkut. Ja, dit is nogal baie weird, baie weird.
Anyway, ons moet maar seker maak dat het veilig, nie? Seker John Walker, en moet seker maak het veilig.
Ja.
Dit is mense raak kwaad goed doen. Jy weet, jy kan nie help nie. Dis nie jy wat kwaad raak nie, dis ander mense wat kwaad raak.
Ja. Jy weet, Karen, dit is sulke goed is nie. Ek sê net, dit is nie, maar dit is nie die manier om 'n ding uit te sorteer. Dit is verseker nie die manier om dit. Maar ons land is lawless, Karen. En is dit die nuwe...
Ons is deel daarvan. Come on, Johan. Ons is so deel daarvan nie. Dit is nie eens fucking snaaks nie. Gaan die Afrikaner nou op 'n fucking toontjie staan en sê, kan ons terug verlang na ons ou moederland.
Ja, nee, dit is waar.
Elke dag deel is van die fucking probleem. Ons is so deel van die probleem, dit is scary.
Jy is reg.
Okay, guys, you can see that it's quite a serious subject we're talking about tonight, and people who actually are taking the bull by the horns, if I can put it that way, are clearly putting themselves at risk. So we have to really thank our guests for coming out and telling things as they are. I'm going to get my guest on. Here we go, and we will be showing a couple of little video clips during this live stream as well. Hi, Gail.
Good evening, Scott. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. And as I've just mentioned, you know, you're an exceptionally brave lady, and it's very important that this information gets out there. Now, I started off this live stream with a short clip out of that lengthier 42-minute audio clip, which focused on a period between about 3 minutes and about 4.5 minutes, I guess, that sort of aspect, where reference is made to the Afrikaners basically running the liquidation area in South Africa, and this is where the association comes in with the Broederbond. But let's talk to that audio tape, which I'm going to put up on Loving Life TV, the complete audio later on, so people can listen to it in context. Now, it is common knowledge that the Broederbond control of the Master's office. Why is this view of the public, and what do they base the allegations on to bring in? And then we're talking about this audio clip. Do you just want to talk about that and how that relates to the assassination of Clute Murray and his son?
Okay. Before we go into that, Scott, what I'd like to just emphasize is how valuable the Master's office is. And I think this is something that all South Africans need to know. If you think about the entire wealth of the public sector lies basically at the Master's office, whether it be in the insolvency section, in your commercial enterprise, or whether it lie in your personal capacity, in your estate lates, or perhaps, as we've discussed, your pension funds and your guardian funds. The Master's office controls an enormous, tangible wealth. And this is obviously very attractive to financial predators. So what I think there hasn't been a lot of attention put on the Master's office for this obvious reason. Nobody wanted people to know about it. However, how I see it is, and how I'd like the public to understand it, is that here you have an office handling this enormous tangible wealth with a very small cabal, let's put it that way, being the Broederbond, that wishes to take it or have it or have power over it for whatever reason. So how I always liken it to is to a waterhole where you have got your predators. Where are the predators going to wait, especially if they're lazy or perhaps don't have to spend a lot of time and effort to hunt or whatever? They're going to wait at the waterhole. So the Master's office, for me, is the watering hole. And all these predators are waiting at the watering hole because it's a captive treasure. And this is what I wish to just let the public know, how dangerous it is that for the Master's Office to be in the wrong hands, which it clearly has been. Now, the allegations that the Broederbond run the Master's Office or control the Master's Office or are well entrenched in the Master's Office is not a new thing. It goes back quite a few decades. However, nobody's ever really been able to prove anything or get any valuable or prima facie evidence to do something about it. So now, with Cloete Murray's assassination, a voice recording between two white Afrikaner liquidators was somehow doing the rounds, and it went viral. How it got out, I do not know, but it went viral. And in this voice recording, these two liquidators, who are obviously, as per the recording, which people that understand Afrikaans will clearly understand, they have a full understanding that the Master's Office is indeed in the hands or the control of the Broederbond and, of course, the liquidators. The liquidators when it comes to your insolvency sections, and, of course, your attorneys when it comes to your deceased estates, which over 500,000 Rand, you have to use an attorney. Your Provident and Guardian Fund, obviously, also, it is at risk, okay, to be in the hands of people who are not going to be have integrity towards the beneficiaries. So what has come out of this voice recording? It's quite shocking, actually, because it shed a lot of light on how these liquidators operate. It also confirmed by let's say it came out the horse's mouth, that indeed the white Afrikaner Broederbond liquidators do indeed control the Master's Office, and they have no intention of letting go.
Right. Okay, we seem to have just temporarily lost Gail. While we're just waiting for Gail to come back on, I should tell you that I've got a couple of video clips that I'll be playing, and I'll just see if I can get Gail back on. Give me a second, guys. Okay, let's try again. Hi, Gail.
Hello, Scott.
We lost you for a second there, but we're back.
Hello.
Yeah.
You're back.
Yep.
Okay.
No,
Sure.
you were just saying about the Master's Office, but yeah, carry on.
I don't know which part I got to.
Well, just you know where it just suddenly hung up on your side? That's where you got
I
to.
don't.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, we were talking about that audio tape, so just continue to tell us about
Right.
the audio tape. Yeah.
That's yes. So this audio tape is, as I said, between two seasoned liquidators, obviously very well entrenched in the cabal, if you say it like that,
Yeah.
who themselves, out of the horse's mouth, say that the Master's Office is indeed in the control of the liquidators, the Broederbond, the white Afrikaners, and that they actually have had no intention of ever letting it go. This, as you know, as the beginning of what you played, she says straight up that the assassination on Cloete Murray was an Afrikaner thing.
Yes.
So, as she says in Afrikaans, okay? Which the male liquidator does not deny, but she's clearly seems to be quite not scared of saying it like it is, and she says, well, it was a matter of time before this was going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So she sheds a lot of light on what's being covered up, what happens between these liquidators and the Masters. And what came out of this tape was that Cloete Murray was, as per her, one of the most hated liquidators of all. She makes reference to another liquidator by the name of Theo van der Heever, who was the most hated of all. And then Pluto Murray comes along, and she says, and he's also not qualified, but he makes Theo van der Heever look like a puppy. Okay, so clearly Pluto Murray was not very well liked, or not liked at all. She actually uses the word he was hated by his fellow colleagues in the liquidation industry. So she says that it was a matter of time before this was going to happen. She then goes on to say that Pluto Murray enjoyed very special privileges from the masters. They obviously did, and she says as much, they did just what he wanted them to do. And she states for the record that Christine Rousseau and Ruben Mpapa, if Pluto Murray clicked his fingers, they jumped. And all the other liquidators had to just do whatever he expected of them to do. So when it comes to the Bosasa matter, she says clearly that he never followed protocol, which he did not. And the reason why there's all this litigation around it. And she says, and that's the reason why Tessie Bezuidenhout actually got fired. Okay. But she then goes on to say that as liquidators, you know, she's a capitalist, she says. She says she could have run Bosasa for 3 years and made 30, 40 million rand, but not Pluto Murray. He comes in like a bull in a china shop, shuts everything down, and he clearly wants to asset strip this thing, and he calls in Park Village auctioneers, his preferred auctioneers, to come and sell off all the assets, which he did, which was subsequently challenged. Okay, so yeah, you've got these liquidators actually confirming that indeed the master's office and the liquidators are all involved with each other. Okay.
Can I just pick up on something you mentioned there, Gail, and that's you mentioned an auctioneering company, Park Village. Now, do these liquidators who are basically involved in asset stripping and benefiting themselves, do they have a preferred auctioneer that they always use so that they can have some kind of a deal in the background when it comes to the sales?
Absolutely. And in my case, I can confirm Park Village auctioneers and Van auctioneers were both involved, and they both knew that it was all fraud. So yes, they do. They know exactly which auctioneers to go to.
Right, and part of that is to basically sell stuff at a lot lower price than it should be sold at, because of the benefits that they personally get from the way they run the auctions. Am I correct in suggesting that?
Yes. What has been the common thought, Scott, is that these people auction things off, and they've rumored, and it's alleged that they have certain people in the bidding
right.
That are going to bid, and they're going to make sure that they get it for that price, you know. And I've actually got confirmed cases where bids were turned down that were higher, but like you said with that farmer, when they accept lower bids, and then you'll find in a couple of weeks' time, the exact same asset being fixed or movable gets resold for a much higher value.
Right. Okay,
and
now
this is how it operates.
I just want to play a short video where, just so you understand the context, there's actually an auction taking place in South Africa for an African taxi. Now, an African taxi, according to the information I have, in this condition, normally sells for over 500,000 rand. And have a look at what this African taxi sells for. Now, once this video is finished playing, I'll get you back and we can talk about this, Gail. Okay, so if everybody watching, this is a video clip that's very recent, and as I say, it's an African taxi that's been sold in South Africa. Here we go.
$162. 161,000 rand, my man right in front. 161,000 rand. Nobody else. All finished and done. 165, 166, 167. at 166,000 rand, my man. 166,000 rand last time, all in, no more. Huh? 170, 171, 171, no, give us a 171. 172. At 172, 173, give us a 174. 173,000 rand, 173. No more 173,000, all finished and done. So, your number please. What is your number?
Okay, so what we saw there was an African taxi being sold, and you could see the taxi was in perfect condition for 174,000 rand. And I guess that the purchaser of that taxi, in many cases of what happens with auctions, would then resell it maybe 2 weeks later for, say, 500,000 rand and then keep the difference. Now, okay,
Yes.
is this a common practice then amongst these cabals, the auctioneers and the liquidators?
Absolutely, Scott. This is their modus operandi. To the point where in one of the liquidations that I was involved in, some of the assets didn't even get sold and they just disappeared. So it's not just that they get sold for undervalue. Some of them just don't even get sold and nothing gets mentioned about it. And the master or the liquidator doesn't query it. And the master doesn't query the liquidator, who should query the auctioneer. So clearly there's something very wrong here.
Okay, now just talking about the master, and we'll get back to Clute Murray and all that in a second. But there's a huge conflict of interest here when it comes to the involvement of a member of parliament, Dr. Motsheki, whose wife is the Minister of Education, Angie Motsheki, because Dr. Motsheki had a 56%, I think it was, shareholding in the liquidation company that Clute Murray was basically the face of. And that liquidation company that Clute Murray was the face of got all the big deals. In other words, they got Basasa, they got anything that was big. And you can imagine the frustration of the Broederbond liquidation mafia when all these big deals were going to clearly someone associated with Dr. Motsheki. And it gets worse because Dr. Motsheki, and correct me if I'm wrong, he plays a huge role in the finance side in Parliament, and he is personally involved in selecting the master at the master's office. And then you can understand why Clute Murray is able to get or do whatever he wants to do, because the boss is the master's boss. Do you want to just talk about that, or just give add a bit of meat to that?
Well, yes, it's been in the press a lot, Scott. He actually owned 54%. He never declared it, allegedly, to Parliament or he never declared his interest. But he does hold 54%, and he is on the Standing Committee of Parliamentary Affairs, and he has a huge, powerful position there, as well as he's involved in the Financial Committee of Parliament. So, it's pretty much very well controlled. And this, as the voice recording, the lady in the voice recording goes on to say, she says that, it was he just did what he wanted because he had all these powers behind him. Yeah.
Now, just getting back to that audio tape, there are a couple of points in here that I think we should just touch on. She talks about the fraud and corruption of the liquidators, and she states they just run the liquidations to milk them of millions to enrich themselves. Now, that's actually in the audio, isn't it?
Correct, yes.
Wow.
Yes. She says she can't understand why Clute, first, he didn't follow protocol.
Yeah.
And secondly, why he didn't just run it for 3 years. She says she's a capitalist. She could have made 30-40 million rand, and then she could have pulled the plug. But not Clute Murray. He just was a bull in a china shop, went in, shut it all down, and basically called in Park Village auctioneers, and they did the asset stripping, and they got caught. And obviously this is what's brought a lot of the spotlight on the Master's office.
Yeah. Now, look, you've studied this audio tape. Do you want to take us through some of the other things that are said in the audio tape? And let's work on from, say, about 14 minutes on. Let's work from there. Over to you.
So I've gone and actually listened to it. It's in Afrikaans, so put it into English. So it's not all direct, but basically the gist of it is correct. At 14 minutes, she says Kruta was a bully, and it was just a question of time before this was going to happen. She then expands on how the other liquidators run companies for 3 years, just for the fees, the millions that they get for themselves, as we've just discussed.
Right.
So clearly now she exposes the modus operandi that these liquidators use, and the only intention they have is of enriching themselves. They make sure the bank is protected and that they get what they want out of it, and bugger the rest of the creditors. They all pay the price.
Now, just on that point, would you suggest that the liquidators have some special contact in, let's say, FNB or ABSA or whatever, and then there are kind of things happening there as well when it comes to liquidations?
Well, yes, absolutely. I can confirm that from our case, because in our case, I've got all the paper trail from ABSA Legal, who knew exactly which liquidator to go to, which was Hannes Müller. In our case, obviously we know from my past live stream that the liquidation of Gage was premeditated in order to cover up the fraud. So here you have ABSA Legal. They knew exactly which liquidator to go to, and actually in the notes that I found in Hannes Müller's box of tricks was a very interesting email between himself and Mohammed Junaid Ali of ABSA Legal, where he said he doesn't really care if they use Park Village auctioneers or Vans auctioneers. It's immaterial to him. So they all know about who they're going to use.
Yeah.
So they're clearly all linked.
Right. Okay. Now, at 18 minutes, she talks about Kruta being royal game at the Masters and at Saripa. What is Saripa?
So with the insolvency practitioners, there's the South African Registered Insolvency Practitioners Association, which has come under a lot of fire lately, and I believe for good reason, because it's believed to be the white Broederbond protected liquidation members, and they are the ones that are getting the preferential treatment. And as we will see from later when we go down, I'll show you how Saripa and the Masters actually work together, right, and they actually protect these white liquidators. And then you get ABRIPSA, which is for your persons of color. Okay, they've now made their own membership, who clearly get prejudiced, as we will discuss later on how and why they get prejudiced, and obviously the solid proof from the Master's office themselves that this is indeed going on in the Master's office, and this is what they're trying to change. So Kruta Murray wasn't like just a demigod with the Master. He was a demigod at Saripa as well, which obviously enraged the other liquidators. And in this voice recording, this lady says that, well, there's 600 of us, or 601, one down and 600 to go. So what she meant by that, I do not know. But she goes on to say that it was a matter of time before this was going to happen. So was she referring, or is she referring to the fact that they've been caught out, and now there's this big spotlight on this huge treasure chest that's just been milked and just stripped? Or what was she referring to? She then goes on a little bit further, and she says Kruta Murray ran the area around Pretoria and Johannesburg. But there's two other liquidators. She says that there's good and there's bad liquidators. Then there's two liquidators in KwaZulu-Natal, one being Kurt Knoop and another guy by the name of Button, who run the show down here. She then goes on to say that she had a call from the Canary Islands.
Now that's a tax haven, isn't it?
Well, she doesn't expand, but she laughs and she says, you know what I mean, okay? She doesn't exactly divulge, but they obviously both know what a call from the Canary Islands means.
Right.
So when I Googled what goes on in the Canary Islands, I find that the Canary Islands are the ideal shipment port and also one of the bases for laundering dirty money via shell companies.
Wow. Okay, well, look,
she then goes on to say,
go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
She then goes on to say that this Kurt Knoop, she knows for a fact, housed one of these insolvent guys, or probably trying to avoid paying creditors. It's not always, sometimes insolvencies are the actual owners of the business that want to siphon the money out and they don't have to pay the creditors. If this was the case, I do not know. But she says one of the, Kurt Knoop actually housed one of the insolvent persons from the Canary Islands. And she goes on to laugh. She then says, how does Kurt Knoop house this guy for a year, she says, in his own home? Okay, so now if you think about what she said, this voice recording has gone out to Saripa, it's gone out to Abrips, it's gone out, I'm quite positive, to Nauru, which is the unions. And this is a big red flag. Canary Islands, housing an insolvent person, a phone call from the Canary Islands, all this type of thing. Yet, Saripa have yet to make a statement on this. So what is interesting is that when she goes on further down in her telephone conversation with this other liquidator, she confirms that Saripa protects the liquidators with the masters and vice versa. And I can confirm that because in my case, or our cases, when we reported the malafides of the liquidators, they all are members of Saripa. We not only reported it to the master, which was Christine Rousseau, we reported it to Saripa. And neither of them did anything but protect the liquidators. In fact, Saripa were actually quite rude to me.
Wow. But she also goes on to say that Solidarity are involved with this whole thing as well. I mean, I thought Solidarity was part of AfriForum and, totally above board. So what's the situation there? Well,
the thought is that Solidarity and AfriForum are actually part of the cabal. So what happens is when you have a liquidation, you have your provisional liquidation order, which the master gives. But the final liquidation order, that is decided by the creditors. Okay, the amount of creditors that vote, the liquidator that gets the most votes will normally be the appointed final liquidator.
Right.
So what Solidarity, what she goes on to say here is that she had 3,000 workers voting for her. Solidarity came in with 500, because she says they're all white. Now, this is not for me about race. This is about what's right and what's wrong. And the master still didn't give her the appointment. And she laughed. She says, how does that work? So Solidarity are playing a very big role they're obviously in cahoots with this whole thing. And they are helping to control the Broederbond, or the white Afrikaner, hold over the fortune that lies at the master's office, one way or the other.
Wow, that's a huge call, because I mean, Solidarity is I've spoken to people at Solidarity, and it's I suppose it's a huge organization, and they could have little legs in that organization where, bad things happen, I guess.
Yes, what's interesting, Scott, I spoke to one of the affected parties in the Genoeg is Genoeg saga, where, the farmers are being liquidated by the land bank.
Yes.
And she confirmed, she says she's so disgusted with AfriForum and Solidarity. They promised to help them, but all they did was gather their information, and then they never heard from them again. And I said that's all they wanted to do, was get your information to see what evidence you have against them.
Wow. Okay, so moving on with this audio tape, this lady then talks about Christine Rousseau having an affair with someone. What's all that about?
Yes, well, it was actually in the newspapers. It's public knowledge.
Yeah.
Christine Rousseau.
Now, she's the master of the master's office. Well, she was.
Yes, she was suspended.
Yeah.
Okay. And she's the one I had a lot to deal with. Her and Tessie
Right.
Bezuidenhout were suspended.
Right.
So the newspaper article, another liquidator by the name of Johan Engelbrecht, Christine Rousseau claims that she is or was having an affair with this Johan Engelbrecht. Now, in this voice recording, this lady goes on to say that he definitely did have an affair with her, despite the fact that he denies it. She says, oh, come on, you did. Even Christine confirmed that you two had an affair. Now, what's interesting, when she says that it was a matter of time before this happened, she says that there's a list, and there's 5. She saw a list, and there's 5 people on this list. One, obviously, Clute Murray. One was this Johan Engelbrecht, who did maybe have an affair with Christine Rousseau. The other one is Hannes Muller, the liquidator in our case. The other is Dion Botha. She couldn't think of the other one. He mentioned Gert de Wet, but they stopped there. And then she goes on to say that John Walker, who is the attorney that represents Christine and Tessie, and who was on carte blanche, he better also be very careful. Now, if you remember the carte blanche expose that you put on, John Walker said that he got a message to say one by one.
Yeah.
So he was in fear. So what's interesting is that John Walker, Christine and Tessie Bezuidenhout allegedly appointed John Walker as masters. They appointed him to do the legal work for the master's office. So now this John Walker apparently did Christine Rousseau's divorce from her husband. So this is not the guy she had the affair with.
Right.
She got divorced. Now, in the subsequent events since they've been suspended, John Walker has now come on record to defend them, which, if you think about it, if they appointed him to defend the master's office in litigation, and now he's defending them in their personal capacity, is this not a conflict of interest, number one?
Absolutely.
It also shows that the public or their professional relationship goes beyond, and it goes into a private relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the article that was splashed out in the newspaper confirms that people had witnessed this John Walker and Johan Engelbrecht and Christine Rousseau all getting together.
Yeah, wow.
In outside of working time.
Now, one of the things that has come to my attention is that these liquidators, you mentioned they go for the full 3 years so they can maximize their profits. I'm actually getting contacts from private people who are saying that the liquidators are bullying them. And, these are people who are trying to get their money back, which has been from a liquidation. And I'm going to play a short video clip where this lady is going to be coming on next month to talk to us about her particular case. But just to add a bit of meat to the bone, this is someone who went through a divorce, just as background, because the divorce was going nowhere. She actually had her estate liquidated, but then the liquidator wouldn't release the funds to her after it had been liquidated, and the liquidator says, if you want to get your money, you're going to have to sue me. This is
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, let me just play that clip, because this is a totally independent person. Here we go. Go ahead.
I just want to mention, Scott, when you play the clip, I actually can't see it or hear it.
No, that's fine.
So yeah, I'll be talking from just what you're saying.
Yeah,
okay?
well, that's it. That's what she says in this clip. But I'll play it now, and I'll let you know when it's finished. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Hi everybody. So exactly what I set out to achieve yesterday was perfect. I set the cat amongst the pigeons. Okay. So you need to go and see the reels right from the beginning. I've had to do them in little episodes like soapies, because in 1.5 minutes you can't explain it. But briefly, nearly 9 years ago I filed for a divorce. It took 4.5 years to get to a high court because it kept getting contested. Eventually I applied for liquidation. I said, right, I'll have your one golf shoe, you have my one ballet pump, and we divided 50-50. A liquidator was appointed, Jeff Fobb. He has embezzled my money. And the only way I can get it back, he told me, to take my ex-husband to court, to re-sue my ex-husband to get my money back, or you accept what I'm giving you. Because if you don't accept it, because of my skills, I'm a qualified advocate, it's going to take you years to prove it. And the last little bit of money you've got, it's going to take that as well. So that is the purpose of these reels, not to make a fool of myself. And to the ugly people with the comments, please go and look from the beginning. My public settings are open because I have nothing to hide. It's Sherilyn Janse van Vieren. Go and look at the reels. My money has legally been embezzled by the appointed liquidator, appointed by the High Court. So go and look. Very interesting.
Okay, now what she closes off by saying that my money has been embezzled by the liquidator appointed by the High Court. And I just want to put this point to you. People who are obviously totally unfamiliar with what to go through or what they're going to go through with a liquidation, so they're basically in a position of ignorance. Are they being abused, or is that ignorance being abused by liquidators?
Yes, it's a number of things, Scott, which I'd like to delve a little bit deeper into further down when I show you what the Broederbond or the liquidators are trying to, and the attorneys are trying to do now to get control of the Master's Office back. But it's a combination. So what happens is once the liquidator steps into the shoes of or takes over the liquidated estate, your powers fall away. You have no powers whatsoever. He is not supposed to abuse those powers, but they do. And then when you try to, find out something or whatever, especially if they're a bully or they're greedy and they are up to nonsense, they just play with you. And the liquidators actually don't advise or inform the directors, the insolvent people, the shareholders, or the creditors correctly on what their rights are and what they should be doing. In fact, they mislead them. I'll go so far as to say that they actually mislead them.
So, just getting back to the Broederbond, why do you think that the control over the Master's Office is so critical for the Broederbond?
It's, you know what, it's just about the money and the power. And if you listen to the last part of the conversation of that voice recording, the female asks the male, she says, why did you become a liquidator? And she says, I did it for the money. I'm a capitalist. She says, but it's about the power.
Yeah.
It's about the power. They love the power. And what's interesting, I'd like to just mention this before we move on a little bit further.
Sure.
Is that she says towards the end of, I think about 37 minutes into the recording, she says that despite the fact that these liquidators are supposed to have PDIs, which is basically a BBE appointment, she says that they have all been fronting. And not one of the Afrikaans or the white liquidators have actually bothered to go and make friends or mix with these liquidators or engage with them or try and pass the skills on, the skills develop, the skills transfer. And she says, it reminds her, she says, we are still in apartheid, which is terrible because fronting is actually a criminal offense.
Yeah.
So she goes on to here, so this is extremely serious. And as members of Saripa should be dealing with this because as they cannot be seen to be getting up to fronting. They must be doing these things properly.
Yeah. I find it extraordinary that you've got a member of parliament, Dr. Masheke, who actually chooses the master at the master's office, has a more than 50% shareholding in the liquidation company that Cloutey Murray was basically the front of, and they got all the big jobs. So clearly there's a huge amount of conflict of interest taking place right through the whole organization when you take Saripa and what's going on there. Now,
absolutely.
Is the control over the master's offices by the white Afrikaners not just a matter of lack of skills in South Africa?
No, Scott, I can honestly tell you, the young generation are extremely skilled. They are very capable. And if you look at, if we can call up the documents that I sent you.
Sure. Which one?
What's the first one, number B.
Okay, let me put. I'm going to share that with you, and then put it up on the screen so we're all on the same page. Give me a second.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Yep. Okay, tell me when you can see it.
You're going to have to go to the beginning of it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just. But you can see the document. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. There we go.
Okay, so if you scroll down, you'll see here, this is an email that I got from Mrs. Rousseau. I think she sent it to me by default. Oh no, this is where she tells me how the liquidators are appointed, okay?
Right.
She says they make the provisional, but the creditors actually make the decision on the final appointment. Now, this is not true. If you scroll down, you'll see here, stop there. Now, in our case, Hannes Müller was the liquidator for Gage Specialists. We know now that, I just want you to stop on the date, go back, have a look at the date. You see it says there's 6th of November 2012, okay?
Right.
Now, on that date, there wasn't even an application to liquidate Gage. Yet here, they were filling in claim forms for the staff. Now, that contradicts what Mrs. Rousseau says. And I sent this to Mrs. Rousseau. She knew about this. If you go down a little bit more, you'll see that, but I just put 2 of them in, okay? And you'll see they stamped. This actually went to court. Okay, This is how the master approved everything. Go down some more. There's 2 claim forms just to show you that Hannes Müller completed the staff who were the majority, would have probably held the majority votes, okay, to choose the liquidator. They were just told to fill in these forms. Okay, go down some more.
There's the stamp again.
Yeah, that's what went to court. So here you see the High Court appointed Hannes Müller on the 24th of April, if you go down, for Gage Specialists. Okay, there it is. This is the provisional one, And then he goes on, he says, and on the 24th of April will be the final liquidation. Now, if the creditors or the concursus creditors have the power, this most certainly wasn't the case here. The staff here were by far the majority of the voters, but yet it was already done and dusted. And at this stage, you must remember, he didn't even, when he filled these forms in, there wasn't even an application for Gage's liquidation. As we know, it was premeditated to cover up the fraud. And the application to liquidate Gage only went to the court in February 2013. But here they are already doing all of this in 2012.
Okay,
so go down a little bit more.
I think just so to bring everything into context here, what we're actually saying is that the court appointed the liquidator on the 26th of March 2013, but the actual document where the liquidator is named is dated the 6th of November, the year before. So that's that clearly doesn't work.
No, these what we're looking at are what they call creditors' claims. The creditors' claims cannot be filled in before a liquidation application has actually even been done. Never mind.
So these are the creditors' claims here.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
So if you go down a little bit more, you'll see he was appointed finally on the 24th of April. This was the provisional liquidation order. You go down a bit more.
Which is 6 months later.
Yes, but he had already done the work for the for the staff. Okay, and we know, of course, that they had no intention of paying the staff. So there, now you'll see here, it says provisional liquidator. You go down a bit more. This is what the master does. She appoints, she makes the appointment, okay? So the reference number is T0866-13 and the company's name. And if you go down, you'll see it's Hannes Miller, Kaplan, de Marillac, etc. Okay? And if you go down a bit more, that was, I think, given in March, 18th of March. That was the provisional liquidation order. And they had to be back in court on the 24th of April for the final.
Right.
Okay? Which now, the final liquidation, this is now at the High Court. That then gets sent to the Master's office, which are two separate entities.
Right.
She cannot just issue a final appointment to the Master. The creditors have the say. So if you go down a little bit more, what's interesting, here we have Gert de Wet's one. Look there, the date is the 7th of November 2012.
Right.
This is for on trading. Okay.
So this is before the court had actually even approved the thing.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So this is for Conrad Kruger's Crooked Company, and they appointed Gert de Wet, okay, and he sends him and the joint liquidator, Jerry Cocker, who's actually not a bad guy. He was obviously the PDI, sent a letter out on the 7th of November 2012 telling them that Gert de Wet has been appointed as joint provisional liquidator. Now, if you go down a little bit more, they made a mistake here because he says it'll be from the effect of 27 November 2012. Okay, they go down a bit more, and you'll see on the 27th of November. Go down to the next document. This is the final liquidation order for Canton Trading from the High Court. You'll see it was given on the 27th of November 2012. If you go down, you'll find the date. Okay. It looks very different to most final orders, but it has come out that this was not a final liquidation order. It was a provisional liquidation order. So they lied to the staff, and they made them fill in forms. They didn't tell them their rights. They did not engage with the unions, who they are supposed to have done. And they just bullied them and just made them fill in the forms. And of course, that's how they got voted on or stayed on as the chosen friendly liquidators to cover up the fraud.
Wow.
If you go down a little bit more, you'll see here, go down a bit more, it's the appointment of Gert de Wet, Canton Trading, Kalkval Trust. Go down a bit more. It says there, by special resolution, 27 November 2012, okay? But the final liquidation order was only given in March 2013. Because if you remember, the letters from January said that they had to liquidate Gage because they couldn't wrap up Canton Trading's liquidation because none of the assets were sitting there. So they were already on the 7th of November, all lined up to tidy up this little mess. Or they were all involved in asset stripping this company or the victims. They saw a victim.
Wow.
If you go down a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see my point I'm coming to now. This is the minutes of the meeting, of the first creditors meeting of Gage Specialist, which was allegedly held on the 6th of the 6th, 2013.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? If you go down a little bit more, you'll see there Hannes Miller was the provisional liquidator. Go down a bit more. It says there that the directors had made no appearance. That's because we didn't know about it.
Right.
And they did it deliberately. Then it says Eugene January was appointed for the staff, which is a blatant lie. And Brad Hutchinson was nominated. He was nominated for Absa Bank. He nominated Hannes Miller. See there, Mr. Hutchinson voted Hannes Miller. And this Mr. Mohlala, who's allegedly a runner for Hannes Miller, voted Mr. Eugene January. Now, what's odd is that Mr. Eugene January has claimed he's never been in that court. And he's never met the staff. And the staff claim forms were all completed on the 6th of November 2012. And this is now in 2013, June 2013. So it just shows you how the courts either don't read or they are all captured and they just stamp these things. So what Mrs. Rousseau said does not work.
Right. I
The
get
creditors,
that.
okay. Now what's interesting about this one, Hannes Muller, you see there Mohammed Junaid Ali. Remember I told you now, the Absa Legal, the van auctioneers, Park Village auctioneers, and the liquidators all sort of have a
They're cabal.
relationship. They
Yeah.
have a relationship.
Right.
Let's say it like this. So this Mohammed Junaid Ali, he says that the insolvent estate of Global Automotive and General Engineering, a claim is 7,045 million rand. He then, in point 2, forgets to change it to from Free Media to Gage Specialists. Okay, he leaves the wrong name there. They don't pick it up in court. Okay. Now, this company should have never been liquidated. It was liquidated as a result of covering up the fraud. If you go down a little bit more, go and have a look. The same Mohammed Junaid Ali, if you go down some more, look what he does. He issues a requisition to Hannes Miller for Absa Bank in the amount, if you go down, for only 6,1 million rand.
Instead of 7 million, over 7 million rand.
So how did these people, between Brad Hutchinson, Mohammed Junaid Ali, and Hannes Miller, submit a claim when the certificate of balance was R1 million less? But this went through court.
Now hang on, let's just look at those figures again. So the liquidated claim figure is 6,110,000. Let's round it up. And the actual claimed figure was 7,045,000.
Correct. It's fraud.
So there's about 900,000 rand that's gone missing somewhere.
Correct. And if you go and you look at the documents that were discovered, this Mohammed Junaid Ali, he manipulated the certificates of balance to match the applications. So in the liquidation application, he made it for 6,1, but where they went after the personal sureties, he changed the same certificates of balance to be 19,4 million rand.
Okay, where do we see that 19.4 million?
Oh, that's not in this one. This is
Okay.
that's just
Right.
trivia. So, okay, so this is just showing you how powerful these cabals are
Yeah.
and what they get up to with the master's office.
And clearly this fellow at the Absa Bank is involved in the whole thing.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And obviously, as per the letter that I found.
Sorry guys, we're just waiting for the internet to come back. I'll just give it a few seconds and then we'll call her back if it doesn't reconnect. Normally it does reconnect, but all right, I'm going to turn that one off and I'm going to call her back again. Here we go. Hi Gail, you're back.
I'll be back.
Yeah, we're back. Yeah, I'll just share this document again with you. Yeah, we lost you on the internet for that's why.
Sorry, Scott.
Yeah, so if yeah, I know what the internet's like in South Africa, don't worry. Okay, so we're just talking about the discrepancy in these liquidated claim figures, which is 900,000 rand, which has somehow just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Yes. So now what's interesting is that you say, is it a lack of skills? No, it's not a lack of skills. If you see these people, what they're doing with the masters of the office and what they're doing in the liquidations, this is blatant racketeering and collusion.
Right.
It's not a lack of skills.
And it's not like you've now got an independent liquidator, an independent auctioneer, an independent banker. They're all basically in cahoots.
Correct.
Wow.
If you scroll down a little bit more, past to the next document, you see there, okay, Absa Bank goes and puts there. Now, this is now filled in by the liquidator, 7,045.
That's the amount that they originally had.
Yeah, they go and put round figures in for the staff. Look at that.
60,000, 50,000, 30,000.
Yeah, which is a lot of rubbish. And then they say they rounded off 5 to 66 on 2,675 million, which, I mean, this is just unacceptable. And yet, the master and Saripa turned a blind eye to this. So this is not a lack of skills. This is a well-planned, orchestrated syndicate.
And just to be clear on this, Gail, that this if this has happened to you, this is probably happening to a whole lot of other people who are going through this whole process.
Well, to be honest, Scott, every single person that phones me has exactly the same problem. Perhaps there's a difference here and a difference there, but yes, no, they're getting nailed. So you'll see a little bit later now, I'm going to show you now, this is obviously why there's been this pressure on the master's office for change, okay?
Yeah.
We're supposed to have embraced the new South Africa. There's supposed to be skills transfer, but there hasn't been.
Yeah.
Clearly, they don't want to do skills transfer. They are out of the horse's mouth. They are fronting. They're not going to teach. They're refusing, or for whatever reason, to hand over or to transfer these skills. Okay. So now, if you go and you have a look at the next document that I put up there.
That's the one we're looking at now.
Yeah. I just want to get my my notes here.
Okay.
I wrote to the master's office now that those other two have been removed. And I asked the new master, please may all the victims have a chance to have an audience to present all the evidence via a section 318 to an unbiased panel of masters with a unrelated panel of liquidators. Okay, so what we are doing here now, Section 318 is where you have the power to be able to challenge the liquidation because of incongruities or for whatever reason. Okay,
Right.
so we're waiting now for this meeting that's supposed to happen. So this, I get an email back from this Mr. Billy Nteta at the Master's Office. If you go down to page 4. And he writes to me, you go down a bit more.
I'm just doing it slowly so people can pause and look at the email later. Okay.
Okay. He writes back to me in my private capacity. You'll see there, doesn't CC all the other people.
Right.
Gets my name wrong. And he says, he admits that there are problems in the Master's Office. But he says that the black liquidators are not prejudiced. He hasn't done it and discriminated. He will give us letters where white liquidators have been removed. He also says that they get removed, the liquidators of color get removed for tax clearance problems or for not having bonds, security bonds. Now, Billy Nteta was involved in the panel that dealt with all these malafides of these liquidators. And now he says here that he has never removed people for nothing, for not doing anything wrong. Yet here he's presented with bona fide, prima facie malafides, criminal malafides, transgressions. And he has the cheek to write this email to me. And then he tries to make out like I'm just trying to do this to get some kind of recognition from Parliament or government or whatever. Which I then wrote back to him and I said, no, my friend, you got it all wrong. Me and my husband fought very hard. You can go the other way, up.
Go back up, yeah.
To actually get fairness and equality into South Africa.
Yeah.
Because we don't like the unfairness. We don't like apartheid. I, as an English-speaking South African, also did not benefit from the Broederbond or the apartheid privileges.
Right.
Not as much as they did, but I know how it felt. But this is unfair. So here's this, he's a seasoned master, he's a senior master. So I write back to him and I said, if his intentions are pure, and he's not just on a fishing expedition for Gert de Wet, Hannes Müller and Renette Steinberg, then he's welcome to engage with me and let's join the fight together. Because he as a master has the perfect position to be able to deal with these problems and put fairness into the Master's Office.
Yeah.
And that was the last time I heard from him.
Wow. So this email here, it's also about the bank fraudulent guarantees or the fraudulent bank guarantees. Is this all part of that email chain we're talking about?
Correct, yes. I requested, because Christine Rousseau, Marion Barnard, Salana McLean, Billy Nteta, and Tanya Nordir, who were all involved in this thing, didn't do the investigation as they should have done. I then insisted that we have an unbiased panel because the letters I'm going to show you just now clearly show that they had, if they don't have any intention, not the masters or anybody, to give privileges to people of color. They intend on keeping it in the cabal of the Broederbond.
Right. Okay. Should we go a bit
so this
further down?
Nteta, he admits it, but he's a hypocrite because he did nothing about it.
Yeah, there's still no response.
No, I haven't got a date yet, but I'm going to get a date. I'm insisting on one.
Yeah.
So now what he says, what's interesting, he says that they use another thing to also enforce the liquidations that they make sure they go to the right cabal. in that now they use what they call bond guarantees, okay?
Yeah.
So this facilitator says he removes them only if they don't have sufficient guarantees. Well, in this case, neither of them, Hannes Miller or Gert de Wet, they're on record as not having sufficient guarantees. They actually borrowed money, had to get money, R1 million from Absa Bank. And they loaned it to them, which is, I don't know how that happened, but they did. And they still did not remove them. In fact, they let them carry on. So here's these white liquidators, Afrikaans liquidators, they don't get removed, but yet the persons of color get penalized for not having sufficient bonds. And what has happened now, as you'll see when we go down a little bit later, because the Broederbond is definitely losing a lot of control over the Master's Office because of the spotlight being on them, they are now, the bond security companies just refuse to give the persons of color securities. So they still go back to the white liquidators.
Wow.
So it's all captured.
Yeah.
So now what's interesting, I'd like to show you this email. This is another one. This is on where the investigation by the SIU has not done anything, okay? Mm-hmm. So I don't know how Mrs. Rousseau sent me this thing by accident. If you go up a little bit more, they were on a bit of a witch hunt here. You'll see here, she says, now this is the SIU she sends this letter to, okay? She says she's telling them who to investigate. She puts their names down there, and you can clearly see this is a witch hunt only on black masters and liquidators. There's their ID numbers there. Yeah. Now, the SIU was supposed to investigate all the masters. But here you have Christine Rousseau sending this email to the SIU. As you can see, they are all white Afrikaners, most of them. And she's telling them who they should be investigating. If you go down a little bit more, she goes on to say about this Mr. Rocha, I don't know what that's about, but she says there's another guy, liquidator referred to, a Mr. Welcome Jacobs, okay? She says they need to investigate him. If you go down a little bit more, it says they are connected to Eugene January. Go back a little bit. Yes, I strongly suggest you investigate Mr. January and his connections with the officials in the Johannesburg office, Mr. Moshama and Mr. whatever. These officials also have connections with Mr. Motala, which is, I believe, is it Enver Motala? Who they got fired.
Now, is this the same January who said he had never been to that meeting?
Correct.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Now they're investigating him. So if you go down a little bit more, this is another email I got from Christine Rousseau. I don't know how I got it, but you'll see here. She writes to John Suttner. Now, when the article came out in the Argus about the allegations about what her and Christine Rousseau were getting up to, you'll see there she sends this email. She says the defamatory allegations made in the business report on Sunday. She was never contacted, She then says, Advocate Suttner and Advocate Paula Zerone had indicated they would assist you pro bono. Go down a little bit more. You'll see here, she says, this is now to Kluter Murray from Tessie Crusade Note. Right. Look at this. Christine Rousseau and their friend, Mr. Kluter Murray. She says there in Afrikaans, clearly somebody's got our mails. Christine, she must bring this to John Suttner's knowledge. She wants to know who their source is.
Oh, now, so there's a witch hunt now.
Yes, and also shows you the collusion going on between the lawyers that are appointed to protect the master's office or represent the master's office, and now they're all in cahoots here with this exposure, and they're going to defend them pro bono. How do they defend them pro bono when they should be under investigation?
Yeah.
These lawyers or advocates are appointed by the masters, and I believe they were appointed by these two masters for purposes of the master's office, not for their professional problems.
I'm just so surprised that you'd send out an email like this underneath her title.
Correct.
I mean, that is crazy shit.
Yeah. And also, remember the master's office is supposed to be transparent.
Yeah.
Why do they want all this secrecy? Who cares where the emails are, who their source is, if they've got nothing to hide?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Okay, so I mean, you got the original documentation or emails, so you can actually see what these guys have been up to. Do you want to, at this stage, go and have a look at the third set of documents?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you move on to this one, if you can make it a bit bigger.
There you go.
Okay. This is the next show. Oh, so basically, I say that the masters and the friendly appointed liquidators are still getting protected. Why do I say this? If you go down and you look, this is now where I asked Christine Rousseau for copies of the bank statements for the liquidated estates, okay, which are the property of the master's office and should be in the file of the liquidated company.
Right.
She writes back to me and tells us we are not entitled to copies of the bank statements. She's happy that the balance is there. Now remember, in this case, this is where the staff were never paid. I asked them, the staff wanted to see that their money was still in the bank account. If you go down a little bit further, you'll see Mrs. Lowe, V. Lowe. She confirmed she was happy that there was that money there, and it was statement number 64 with Nedbank. Okay, and the staff salaries are indeed safe, but they refused to give the staff copies of the bank statements, which the staff or the creditors are entitled to inspect, because they have to light the master's office for inspection before they're allowed to sign them off for the liquidators to release payment. So clearly, the liquidators are still getting protected by these masters.
Right. Oh, look, that's quite clear. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. And to the amount of 1.5 million rand.
Yes, and what they did was they actually went and halved the staff salaries and gave Conrad Kruger, who was the crook, more money.
Oh.
So, yeah, I don't understand it, but anyway, if you go down a little bit more, you'll see here. You go down a bit more to the next. Go down a bit more.
Now, I just want to mention at this stage to everybody watching that there's another bombshell allegation coming out about the master's office through a completely different source. It'll be a completely different discussion, and it's we'll treat that as a totally separate situation. Okay, but back to you, Gail.
Okay, so if you go down a little bit more, that's just where I asked for the proof. Go down a bit more. Okay, this is what I want to show you. So now I've also asked for Hannes Müller, Swanee Trust's bank statements. I've actually emailed Absa Bank, all the board of directors, because I said there are incongruities and malafides here.
Yeah.
Now I showed you the one about the SARS, where they were not paid.
Yes.
Now this, if you go down a little bit, the master released Hannes Müller in 2014. This is 2015.
Wow.
And can you see there on the 6th of February, there's a little Forex charge there.
Yes.
What was Mr. Miller sending out Absa Bank offshore?
Well, this
Was
is
it
where
to
the
the
money
Cayman
laundering
Islands?
comes in, doesn't it?
Well, what did it go to the Cayman Islands? I don't know, because Gage had no offshore creditors.
Wow.
So this is probably why they don't want to give us the bank statements. So they are still protecting these liquidators. Now, the other liquidators, if they didn't produce their bank statements, they would get so many days and they would be penalized. I've actually seen the letters where they just penalize them and they remove them from the panel of liquidators. So these liquidators and these masters are clearly all in cahoots with each other, including the advocates that they operate with, the attorneys that they operate with. Solidarity has now popped up. AfriForum has now popped up. So there's a lot of rot coming out of the woodwork. And if you think about that audio of that conversation between those two liquidators, this is not just the public saying this, Scott. These are people on the inside.
Yeah, exactly.
That are confirming there are indeed fraud and corruption going on here. And actually that female liquidator says straight up, she says, we are the very reason, we are the very biggest problem of the fraud and corruption in this country. She must come and explain that.
Now, just looking at that figure of 7488.74, which has sort of got a ring around it, and that's talking about the settlement. What is that about?
Okay, so what happened was I asked Alta van Wyk for proof of payment to SARS as per their liquidation and distribution account, because I went to SARS and they didn't get the money. I got the statement of accounts from them for both Canton and Gage. The money does not reflect on the liquidation and distribution accounts. So she made the fatal mistake of sending me these bank statements, which is post when the liquidator released Hannes Müller as the liquidator. So these bank accounts shouldn't have even been opened, never mind having money in them.
Yeah.
And you can clearly see in 2015, there was still 955,000 in that bank account.
Now, can I just take us back to the first document, and I'll tell you why I'm doing this, because we had that discrepancy of about 950,000 between the 7 million and the 6.1 million. Let's just see if that's close to that figure, because I'm just wondering if this is somehow tied up with that. So if we go back up here, where are the bank statements?
It'll actually be on your, just go up, it's on your certificate of balance.
Yeah.
We must go down some more.
Go down. Yeah. Okay, I'll just go down a bit slower. Because it would be interesting to see if that figure is close to that 955,000. The discrepancy.
Yeah, I've actually tried to find out where it is, and I haven't managed to find it. How they did this. Okay, so go down a bit more.
Oh, there you are. So, okay, 7045. So let's just use those figures, and then the figure that they've got down here is 61, I think.
Correct.
Where is it? 661.
Go down a bit more. 6110. Yeah.
So 7045 minus 6110 is, let's see, 5, 3. That's 935,000. Which is very close to the figure that we've got on here.
Correct.
955,000.
And remember, on that date, there was no more creditors to be paid. The bank statement should have been empty, but they were not. SARS never got the money, and we didn't certainly have any reason to send money offshore. So what was Hannes Müller and Absa Bank sending money offshore for?
Now, the date of this letter... The date of this letter is 2013, and this payment is in February 2015, 2 years later. It's something very strange happening here. You don't have to be a genius to see that.
No. Now think about this now, Scott. Do the people have reason to moan about these masters? Yes, they do. And I am a white person, if you want to put color to it.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that this is just criminal. This is fraud.
And the master's officer is doing nothing about it. I mean, that's the whole thing.
No.
And again,
In fact, they just
2013.
take through, or they just don't. Well, the new master, I must say, she's trying, but I believe until she gets, which I'll go into a little bit later, I'll tell you what we'll deal with that a bit later, what needs
Sure.
to happen.
Yeah.
But I believe that this is why these masters didn't want to give these bank statements, and why they don't insist on the bank statements being in the files. And also probably why 45,000 files went missing out of the Pretoria Master's Office on its own, because this is probably not just the only liquidated estate where there's funnies going on.
Well, I'd say all of them are like that. And I just want to make the point, Gail, that every single person watching this show right now, the live stream right now, will at some time in their lives, whether it be a liquidation, whether it be their will, they're going to be basically handled by the Master's Office. So everybody watching is going to have to, at some time or other in their lives, actually have their affairs, their estate, handled by this organization, which is clearly doing some very shonky stuff.
Correct. Yeah. That's how they've captured the public sector's wealth. They've absolutely captured the public sector's wealth. And if the public sector don't wake up and insist that the Department of Justice put in honest, transparent people in the Master's Office to protect their interests, the subjects of the state's interest, which is the public, they're going to have nothing left. This is all going to, I don't know if it's going offshore, but this little cabal have clearly focused on the Master's Office. Very clever, but very wrong.
Okay, now what's this? This is their final clearance, isn't it? And again, 2015, 2 years after the balances were supposed to be extinguished.
Correct. You'll see here they say that they paid this money to SARS,
Yes.
which they did not. And you'll see there's still a balance in the bank,
Yeah.
which is impossible if the master released them. And she released them in November 2014. Like, she got the release certificate. So the masters have got a lot of accountability to do here. Christine Rousseau was directly involved in this.
Do you think it goes right up to the top? Do you think that, they were actually involved in this whole thing, knowingly involved?
I believe, Scott, it's my opinion, that this has been going on for decades. And I'll show you why when we get to it.
Right.
It's to do with an old act from 1936. And this is what we'll deal with now when we're coming to the end, and what is the solution to protecting the private sector's wealth from these predators. On this point, when I said the files disappeared, what's interesting, during the time that the Master's Office was being investigated by the SIU, as I told you, the servers were stolen or hijacked. What is interesting about this is that the IT supplier that was dealing with the master server is the ex-Chief Master Besson's son.
Mm.
And how do you not have a backup in such a huge department as the Master's Office and the Department of Justice? Only one server. I believe it was done to sanitize, and obviously this is a small thing, but obviously there are bigger problems, and they had to sanitize it, because I believe that they don't know where they stand with the next election and how long they can still control the Master's Office for, because obviously it's getting a lot more tension and a lot more pressure. And I believe that's why this server went missing, which I don't believe it did. And it's interesting that this guy's son was appointed to take care of the IT.
Well, there's one thing that we know for certain, and that's based on the evidence that's been presented tonight and that discussion, the audio, which I'll put up as a separate video on Loving Life TV. What we do know for a certain is that there are little areas, and this is not a little area, this is a huge area, which are basically dominated by the Broederbond, or the cabal, even today, nearly 30 years after 1994. That's quite extraordinary. Is there anything more we need to look at on this document here?
Let's just go down.
We've got quite a lot to go here.
Down, have a look. Okay, now this is just the article out of the newspaper.
Right.
Where Christine Rousseau was involved. It was all splashed over the paper with this Engelbrecht guy.
Oh yeah.
And this Pamodzi scandal. And of course, Mr. John Walker, who was on Carte Blanche with Christine Rousseau and Tessie Bezuidenhout. Well, he's a colorful character.
He sounds like a drink. Johnny Walker whiskey, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, he's a colorful character. That's all I can say. But he's definitely in cahoots with these people.
Right.
And you can see Engelbrecht, Rousseau, Walker, they all involved here. Now, what they did was, there was a gentleman by the name of Enver Mutala, and they focused on him. Enver Mutala always he focused on not letting the banks defraud people, okay? So I don't know if they were tasked to take him out, but they did. And you can see here that even when in the letters that Christine by accident sent to me, the emails, they were out to get Enver Mutala, Eugene January, and persons of color.
Yeah.
So what is interesting now is that what people don't, or what Carte Blanche, and what you won't find in the press in South Africa, is they don't tell the people that these guys have got accountability in that John Walker has been tasked to declare where the money is because the staff have not been paid from the Pamodzi Aurora liquidation.
Right, and this is where they're talking about it here.
Correct. So all these names all pop up in the same little circle. Master's Office, Broederbond, all Afrikaners, all white, all Saripa. So where I want to go with this thing, what's happened now? Well, we've got wind of the fact that these guys want to now remove the Section 318 or have it declared or take it to Constitutional Court to have it taken out. Now, a Section 318 is where the creditors have the power to have the investigation done on the liquidation or if there's any unprocedural things. How can they even consider that? So it shows you they are still plotting to keep control on the Master's Office. And what is interesting about this whole thing is that what you have at the Master's Office, besides the fact that Mocheka can appoint the Master, is that when you have what they call a Section 417 and a 418 is when the liquidators invest the goings on into the company, which Kluter Murray allegedly was doing to Bosasa. What's wrong with this now is that the liquidator gets to appoint the master of his choice to do this in the 417 inquiry and vice versa. So it's rumor, but it's now common belief that Tessie Bezuidenhout and Christine Rousseau and John Walker are trying to convince the Master's Office to still let them do all the Section 417 and 418 investigations. Now, what is interesting about the 417 and the 418 investigations, they are never fair, or I don't believe that they are honest in these things. I believe it's just a trap. And it just gives the liquidator even more power to just do what he wants. And hence, where I'm coming back to the video you played about the lady, about where she says she doesn't know what to do. The section 318 is where she has the power to go and challenge that liquidator without going to court, to declare where her money is lying. And this is now the rumor that's going around that these white liquidators, white Broederbond liquidators and attorneys want to have declared unconstitutional.
Wow. Whew. You know what I find extraordinary is you've got Dr. Macheke, who's he obviously would not be aware of what's going on, or if he is aware of what's going on, that would be extraordinary, seeing he's ANC minister. And yet I've noticed that all the top masters at the master's office are white people. You know, I don't think you've had a black master at the master's office. You might have regional masters. Can you tell us how that works? You've got the top one, and then you've got like little regional officers for the master's office, don't you?
Yes, well, you have the chief master, which is over all of them. And then you've got 15 master's courts in South Africa. And then they have senior masters, and then they get allocated according to, it goes from A to F and G to whatever, and then those masters deal with those, get allocated those insolvencies, or they get allocated those deceased estates, and that's how they operate. So what's interesting about the insolvency section, where the biggest, I believe, fraud and corruption is going on, and nonsense, despite the fact that Tessie Bezedner and Christine Rousseau have been removed, there are still well entrenched old school, old regime masters in those sections that are ensuring that they keep control of the master's office. And it doesn't matter who the Minister of Justice puts in or who gets appointed as the chief master, as long as the people under them are doing what they want or working against, in my opinion, they are working against the new master. She will never be able to succeed. So what has transpired is that in the Zondo Commission, a lot of this stuff cooked out. And there is a draconian law or a draconian act that the insolvency practitioners, your BRPs, big business rescue practitioners, and your attorneys like to use and abuse the loopholes in this old act of 1936 to be able to get away with having all these powers, and they are basically a law unto themselves. So Chief Justice Zondo committed to go and have this changed in 2022, but he still has not done it. And we believe that Motshekga himself has a direct influence on this, for the reason why this has not been done. And until this act is changed, along with a couple of little loopholes in the Companies Act, which also need to be amended, the master's office is still not safe. And whoever they put there as the chief master is going to be at risk unless the Minister of Justice himself gets behind her, supports her, makes Chief Justice Zondo do his job, and enforce what he committed to do, stop this nonsense, and change the laws to come in line with our Constitution. Because there's nothing wrong with our Constitution. Our Constitution is healthy. It's the laws that must come in line with the Constitution.
Right. Okay, now I'm just going to finish off going through this last document. I think it's an article that we're going through.
Correct.
And is anything more in here that we need to cover, or is that it? These are articles, aren't they?
That's just basically showing you that these guys come on carte blanche, squeaky clean. However, go and Google. You'll find these guys are all got little things, little skeletons in their closets that they're hiding. And now it's these very people that are trying to get the power that the little bit of power that the victims put it this way, have to be able to challenge these liquidators, to stop them from doing this, or perhaps find out why they're doing it, or question it or report it. They're trying to have this section made unconstitutional, which is nonsense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, I think the most compelling argument that people should wake up to is that every single person listening to this live stream, if you're in South Africa, at one time or another in your life or after you pass, your assets are going to be in the hands of the Master's Office. And, you know, as that woman said earlier with that little testimonial that I played, the liquidators are basically refusing to pay her out, and they're saying, take us to court, you know, and if you take us to court, well, you're not going to have anything left, because we'll make sure that your expenses are such that, so in other words, they're actually, it's bullying, blatant bullying and crime.
It's what they call the old attrition. They just whittle it away, or they just make you wait, or you just never get to court. And when you get to court, you must remember one thing: because the justice system has been so captured, it's only just recently that the judges are perhaps waking up or doing the right thing. However, just because you get your case into court, and you might have a prima facie case, Scott, doesn't mean that the judge hasn't been bought.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. Now, okay, so let's just move away from those documents. Okay, on the point of protection, let's talk about the voice recording and the contents of what those two liquidators stated, which is exposing all the extortion, fraud, theft, abuse, etc. Is this what these liquidators and masters have done? And how can you say that?
Well, yes, it is exactly what they've done, Scott. This is what the public have been reporting and asking for these investigations to be done and to be sorted out. And in this voice recording, these two seasoned liquidators, it comes out of the horse's mouth. They state there, they are the biggest reason for the fraud and corruption in this country.
Right. Now, just talking about Carte Blanche and Rousseau and Bezuidenhout, I listened to that interview, and they were playing the victim in that interview. What's your comment on that?
On Tessie Bezuidenhout, I did not have much to do with her, but from the deceased estates, where the articles in the newspaper where she turned a blind eye to the masters that were involved with liquidators that were pilfering out of the deceased estates, and also the guardian funds. Masters of the High Court cannot be doing this, Scott. So she's clearly dishonest. If she turned a blind eye, you know, if you know of a crime and you don't report it, you are guilty of a crime.
Yeah.
If you cover it up, even worse. So she covered this up. She admits it. So I have no respect for what she did. And the Master's Office cannot certainly have a master with this attitude representing the public sector's wealth. On Christine Rousseau, I had a lot to do with her. And as you can see, clearly she is involved with these white liquidators, very much involved with these white liquidators, to the point where it's been in the papers. She's having affairs with this liquidator. She's got the lawyer doing her divorce. It's just a mess. A professional environment, such as the Master's Office, and remember, these are all supposed to be seasoned attorneys with master's degrees, okay, or degrees, behaving like this. You know, Scott, it's unacceptable. It's actually terrible the way they have been conducting themselves. And they think that they are untouchable. They have been untouchable till now. But with Cloete Murray's assassination and with the investigation by the SIU and all the things that have leaked out by accident, by people getting emails by accident, etc., unfortunately, they've all now been exposed.
Yeah. Well, look, you know, the tragedy is that, you know, we talk about corruption and we talk about the crimes that are taking place in South Africa. We tend to point our fingers at the ANC government. And what we're looking at here is a completely different cultural group who've captured the master's office, and they're doing exactly the same thing. I mean, that to me has been the really big eye-opener in this whole discussion. There's clearly fraud taking place, and clearly there are cabals which have formed within the master's office involving auctioneers, liquidators and bankers and so on. And the whole thing is completely fraught, just to use a good old Afrikaans word.
Correct. But to take it a little bit further, Scott, it's actually even worse than what the ANC government have allegedly done. If you think of state capture, the state is made up of subjects.
Yeah.
So the ANC have basically been accused of taking the state money, okay, which is the subjects. That's basically your government money, which is supposed to go for our hospitals and our schools and roads and whatever. And that's obviously why the country's in such a mess.
Yeah, yeah.
However, the capture of the master's office is worse because they are focused on stealing the private sector's money.
Yeah.
Not the state's money.
Yeah.
The private sector's money. So the state's money is one thing, but your private money is where it's going at the master's office. So the Department of Justice has got a lot of tidying up to do to look after the subjects of the state, which is their job.
Well, I had a very brief interaction when I was in South Africa last month with a senior manager at the Department of Justice, and that was interesting. Yeah, I won't go into the details, but you know, she basically approached me and said, "I'm going to call the police and have you thrown into prison." Seriously? And I did absolutely nothing wrong, but she was just sort of, you know, spreading her wings and showing how powerful she was. It was just crazy.
You see, they like to bully people, Scott.
Yeah.
And most people are timid and they get away with it. But then you get the odd person that comes along and says, "Well, give it your best shot."
Well, that's exactly what I said to her. I said, "Look, I'm an Australian tourist. If you want to have me thrown behind bars and create an international incident, which really won't help your tourism industry, which is already completely effed in South Africa, go for it." And that kind of, you know, it took a little while for it to sink into her head, but then she realized that maybe she'd overstepped the mark. But okay, now let's get back to this whole incredible saga. And as I say, I've got a couple of people lined up who are going to be basically like parroting what you're talking about. So this isn't, for people listening, this isn't just one isolated incident. This is happening right across the country. It's a huge con that's taking place at the master's office, and it involves all the liquidators, the auctioneers, even bank staff, includes people in the Cayman Islands where money is laundered. I think Al Jazeera should do a thing where they were talking about how gold is used for money laundering. I think they should talk about how the master's office is used for money laundering, because you know, trillions of rands, seriously, trillions of rands every year go through this organization, whether they be big wills or liquidations or whatever. It's a huge amount of money involved here.
Exactly. And you must remember, Scott, the liquidators and the attorneys use trust accounts. And nobody ever gets to see these trust accounts. And the few that I have seen have all got serious, for example, Conrad Kruger. he was moving money offshore. Here's Hannes Muller, trust account.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have a trust account for a liquidated estate, but there's a little forex charge. So I think the Department of Justice needs to go, or the Institute of Chartered Accountants and the FATF need to go and have a look at these trust accounts, because clearly they are conduits that they are using to move money offshore, laundering money out of this country, and asset stripping this entire country.
Well, look, what happened to your brother with Gage is absolutely disgusting when we talk about Conrad Kruger and Absa Bank and what they did. And if or when the Master's Office is properly investigated, do you have any way to seek compensation for the losses that your family have endured because of this?
Oh yes, we are busy with civil litigation against Absa Bank, and I actually did my my duty in reporting the crime to all the directors of the banks that are involved.
Right.
And once the directors, and you will know this, of a bank are aware, and I included the FATF because we've been grey listed.
Yeah.
I informed them of the criminal transgressions involving senior members of their staff in their legal, internal, external, and forensic departments. And I got a nice little email from the lawyers, the new lawyers of Absa Bank, because remember Brad Hutchinson had to run away because now he's implicated. He was involved in the plot. So I've got this nice little message now from the new lawyer who's threatened me with a gag order. So I said, but I am therefore going to reserve all my rights to protect myself from being prevented from reporting a crime. Now, any lawyer that tries to prevent somebody from reporting a crime, this is obstruction of justice.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I got a nice little letter from Weber Wenzel just an hour before I went live with my first one. That was with Johan Rutt. And yeah, what I did was I had a PDF attached there which had a whole lot of threats against me, and I just put the PDF up on the screen and read it out to them, and I said, I hope Weber Wenzel staff watching are enjoying this, and we went ahead with, and never heard a thing from them since. It was just blatant intimidation. Now,
it was.
Gail, I'm going to wrap up this live stream. I'm going to hand over the floor to you in a second, but just one final question for you. And I just want to say that people in the side chat are saying kudos, well done for standing up, because as I said at the very beginning, you've been very brave, and if you didn't do it, this would just continue. So in conclusion, what would you say needs to be done to stop the fraud and corruption? And do you think that this can be achieved, especially in a country like South Africa, where, the mafia are running the place in so many different areas?
It can be achieved, Scott, but I don't believe it can be achieved through our political systems. No politician is going to do it. I believe that it's going to be up to each and every single individual to stand up and fight for their own rights, because you cannot rely on the justice system. You cannot rely on the civil legal system. They all compromise. They will not go up against the banks. They won't even go up against each other.
Yeah.
But if you think of the size of the cabal that's doing this,
It's
and the
tiny.
size of it's small.
It's small, yeah. It's
So
a number of bad eggs.
Each and every single subject of this state is entitled to know their rights and use them. And I am asking each and every single South African to become familiar with your rights and understand one thing. Stand together with the other victims, because otherwise you are on your own. Until the Department of Justice, when the Minister of Justice cleans out his house, you are not going to get any relief unless you do it yourself.
Right. No, look, that's exactly right. Now, okay, just in wrapping up, any closing comment you'd like to make regarding this whole fiasco?
Yes, I would like to say something, Scott, to the bullies that have been doing this and hurting all these innocent people in South Africa. They have got their work cut out for them, because there are hundreds of thousands of victims that have found out what they're up to.
Yeah.
And they're getting more and more powerful by the day. And as that lady said in her voice note, she knew it was a matter of time till this happened. Well, guess what? They've been caught out. So guess what? They better either stop their nonsense. I don't know how they will ever compensate for what they have done, because there is no way they can compensate for it. What they have done is just terrible. But they are going to be stopped one way or the other. That I can assure them. And that is coming from every single person that I deal with on a daily basis, which are hundreds of thousands of people that are sick and tired of being bullied and having everything stolen and robbed from them, including the quality of their lives. So they got their work cut out for them. It's going to end.
Right. Well, I'm going to wrap up this live stream with a quote. And this is Martin Niemöller, who died in 1984. He was a prominent Lutheran pastor in Germany. And he wrote, and this is a very famous quote, I'm sure everybody's heard it. And it goes as follows. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And that I think really sums up what we're talking about here, is that, you know, people have got to wake up to the fact that, you know, unity is strength. People have got to take a stand against the master's office and this cabal running the show there. And if they don't, well, as Niemöller says, they're going to come for you, you know. So
they finished, Scott. And on that point, I'd like to just say thank you to you and Marlena and Loving Life TV for also being brave, because you will not find at any media in South Africa that will be prepared to do this. Firstly, they are all captured by Naspers, Koos Becker, and the Stellenbosch Mafia.
yeah,
And if they're not captured by them, they're too scared to go up against them. So kudos to you and Marlena. You are also two very brave, special people. And but for you, this would have never been made public. And the victims would have never found each other. Through your channel and what you and Marlena are doing, the victims are finding each other. And this is how we are able to get the power together.
fantastic. Well, look, that's our objective, is to get the truth out there. And it doesn't matter what color the skin is of the people who are committing fraud or crime. We will expose it. You know, that this is something, it's crazy. The Loving Life platform is totally colorblind. And we've got some presenters like Petrosito, who's out there fighting for the farmers. We've got a whole range of people of color who often are on live streams. And yet, because we attack the corruption within the ANC, of course the R word is used because it's a nice, easy way out. Well, tonight's live stream has basically reflected the fact that it doesn't matter who you are in South Africa, Loving Life will expose you if you're committing fraud and crime. And that's just a message for the Broederbond. I do have to say I'm really disappointed to hear that solidarity appear to be in the thing, because that's hugely disappointing to me, but it is what it is. Gail, thank you. And look, please take care and say hi to your husband for me, and just keep at it. You're going to win this, I know it. And
Thank you, Scott.
if there are other people listening out there who've got an issue with the Master's Office, just contact me through lovinglifetv.com, and we will happily, as long as you provide, like Gail did tonight, the evidence of what you're saying, we will happily put your story up there and just keep putting the pressure on them and the big banks like ABSA, because serious issues in the whole financial system, and I can understand why South Africa's on the grey list. Yeah, it's only a matter of time before it hits a blacklist, I think. All right,
Yeah.
Gail, take care, and
Thank you, Scott.
we'll catch up again soon.
Thank you, Scott. You have a good evening, and thank you for having me on your show again.
You're always welcome, and keep in touch with Marlena, and if there are further developments, we'll happily cover them.
Thank you, Scott. I'll keep you posted.
Okay, bye for now.
Thanks, Scott. Bye-bye.
All right, guys, that was Gail, and she's a really brave lady. Let's be quite clear about that. And I have got, as I mentioned, a couple of other guests who will be coming up in the next few weeks, and we'll be talking about the Master's Office, and basically just confirming what we're talking about here tonight, that there's a huge issue in that area. I just want to say thanks to the moderators for looking after the side chat, and I'm now going to go out with Hier Bly Ek Boer. Have a great evening, everybody, and don't forget, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, we will be discussing a different topic, but the best way of actually keeping track of that is by registering on our platform, lovinglifetv.com, where we don't face censorship like we do on YouTube. And just on that point, this video will not be kept on YouTube. It will be stored and archived on lovinglifetv.com. So please go to lovinglifetv.com if you want to refer this video to friends and family. That'll be happening overnight, so it'll be up there by tomorrow morning South African time. Alrighty, here we go. Hier bly ek boer. Take care.
Meer as 61,000 van ons voorvaders het op die grens vir ons gesterwe, sodat ons vry kan wees. Die is my land, die is my reg. Hier is ek boer. Stap is ek gemaak en sal ek terugkeer. Die Bybel is die woord waaruit ek leer, soos die grond op die aarde. Hier bly ek boer. Soos diep in die nacht sal die vyand kom, maar hier bly ek staan en ek draai nie om, want jy maak my nie bang nie. Hier bly ek boer. Die is my land waarvoor ek sal veg. Die is my bloed, my sweet, my reg. Die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef. Die is my land, hoor wat ek jou sê. Die is my land, wat my mense voel. Hier bly ek boer. Soos 'n blasem in die somer wat vreugde bring, my oupa wat maniekie kon sing, soos hy stap deur die lande. Hier was hy boer. My wortels lê diep in die grond geplant. Jy sien soos my pa, los ek vir jou die land, en jy hoef nie te vrees nie. Hier sal jy boer. Die is my land waarvoor ek sal veg. Die is my bloed, my sweet, my reg. Die is die plek waar my voorvaders leef. Die kom, die leeu sal 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 kom.